Good evening. My name is Hutson, and I'll be doing a presentation on a lesson that I did, which was the parts of a computer. Before I go into the lesson itself, we must first discuss the classroom demographics. I got in contact with Miss Angie Hutson. She's an 8th grade teacher at Elkins Middle School, and there were a total of 18 students in the class that she was having a dilemma in. Now, the classroom environment was very peculiar to me. All of the computer stations were outlining the back of the wall. This allowed for much more movement throughout the middle of the classroom and for students to be able to get to the front of the room much easier. There were a total of 25 computer stations, all of which had MacBooks. Now, the subject of this class was the Introduction to Business Communications and Technology course. The dilemma that Miss Hutson faced was that she was trying to help her students to retain the information that she gave them. The information was needed for the end of the year test to make sure that the students could pass the frameworks that were needed. She used a conventional style approach in which she gave the students flashcards, but the students weren't able to understand this type of material. To first get started, we must understand what I am trying to introduce. And this is the idea in creating level of Bloom's taxonomy, where students will be given the opportunity to apply the information given to them to create their own educational game based on the parts of the computer. This was done in what you'll see later. Now, for the curriculum was based on the Business Communications 4.1.1, in which students will label and define hardware components of a computer system units, and peripherals. They needed to create a diagram of computer hardware system, which included printers, scanners, speakers, a microphone, headsets/earphones, and etc., and how they function together, and label them as input or output devices. The CCSS standards were L7 to 8.4, L7 to 8.6, W6 to 8.3, R6 to 8.4, and R6 to 8.7. The NETS-S standards were 1B, 1D, 6A, and 6B. The technology that I used were 3 separate types of technology. The first was a Google form, the second was a Quizlet, and the third was a website called Play Factile Games, where students can create educational games such as Jeopardy. This is an example of a Google form. As you can see, it shows the questions in a nice, neat fashion, as well as shows the responses that students receive for the Google form, so it's very easy for the teacher to understand. The second was a Quizlet, in which this is actually the actual Quizlet itself, in which students will see that they'll see the parts of a computer and the images. From here, students will go to take a test, which you'll see later. The third and final technology used was the Play Factile Games. This is an example of the Jeopardy board that students were able to create. Now on to the lesson. The introduction was a pre-assessment type of introduction in which students would log on to the computers, open Google Classroom for this particular class. In that Google Classroom, there would be a link in which students would be able to take a test on Quizlet. From there, the students would submit the score they received on Quizlet using the snipping tool to the Google Classroom assignment. This took a total of 10 minutes. The second was a direct approach in which students would be given a handout to follow along to a PowerPoint. There was also a modified handout for the student who had an IEP in her class. This took a total of 15 minutes. And the idea was a direct approach in which Ms. Hutson would get in front of the classroom and give a PowerPoint on the parts of a computer. The second was a guided discovery in which students would go back into Google Classroom and find an assignment for creating their own educational game. The part that made it guided discovery was that Ms. Hutson would show the students how to get started and an example as a means for a guided discovery. The students from there would create an educational game from the site playfactile.com, as you can see right here. And this took a total of 20 minutes today, and if it was not completed today, they would finish it tomorrow. I assumed that students would not be able to finish it in a timely manner and must finish it tomorrow, but we would see. The final part of the lesson was the closure, in which students would answer a Google form in which they would decide if they enjoyed this style of teaching or they preferred a conventional style of teaching. This took a total of 5 minutes. Now on to the assessment. The first of two types of assessment was the Quizlet Assessment. This, as stated, was using a direct style approach in which students would receive a participation grade based on if they completed the test or not. This would show the understand level of Bloom's taxonomy. As you can see right here, here's an example of the answers to the Quizlet questions. This student received an 85, but they were given full credit for participation as it was used as a pre-assessment. The next and final was an educational game assessment. This was very indirect, as students would receive a grade based on a rubric guideline instead of as a test score. And this showed a create level of Bloom's taxonomy. Here you can see the educational game assessment itself. Right here it says Mr. Hutson. It has been modified to say Miss Hutson for her classroom. Now this is the end of my lesson. If you have any questions about the lesson itself or need any information, you can email me at ghutson15@gmail.com. Thank you, and I hope you enjoyed your time.